Namaskar, I am your host Naraayannkar. Today, many decisions were taken. One of the biggest decisions was the vaccines for all was announced by Narendra Modi government. And even Kejriwal took a decision for imposing 6 days of lockdown in Delhi. Also, a very bad news came in that Manmohan Singh has turned COVID positive. And yesterday, Manmohan Singh had written a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi giving 5 suggestions to manage COVID crisis. And today, Dr. Harshvardhan in response, has blamed the Congress ruled states for the fresh surge in COVID cases. He tweeted saying that history shall be kinder to you, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, if your offer of constructive cooperation and valuable advice was followed by your Congress leaders as well as in such extraordinary times. So he was blaming the Congress ruled states for the fresh surge of COVID cases in India. He also went on to say, Dr. Harshvardhan, that irresponsible comments made by some Congress leaders have resulted in a below average national vaccination coverage of senior citizens and even frontline workers in some of the party ruled states. People in responsible positions in your party, that is Manmohan Singh's party, as well as in the state governments formed by your party, do not seem to share your own views. So, Dr. Harshvardhan was very critical about the letter written by Manmohan Singh to Prime Minister Modi. So, after Harshvardhan had replied, there was a lot of many Congress leaders started to criticize Dr. Harshvardhan for, some of them were saying that Dr. Manmohan Singh is a scholar, Dr. Manmohan Singh is a very big leader, he is a former Prime Minister, and Dr. Harshvardhan should not have given the reply. Some of them went to the extent of saying that Manmohan Singh's letter was statesmanly. I do not know what is statesmanly in that letter. Statesmanly letter would have been pinpointing what Dr. Harshvardhan has pinpointed, that the surge was because of the Congress ruled states. So if Manmohan Singh would have mentioned this, that would have really, many would have said that was a statesmanly letter. But it was a political letter, there is no doubt about it, and Dr. Harshvardhan gave a political reply, and which is his right. So when the Congress leaders started to criticize Dr. Harshvardhan, at the same time, many decisions of the central government started to pour out following a high-level meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. But soon after these decisions of COVID management was announced by the central government, the Congress leaders, they started to hog limelight. They started to say, look, yes, yesterday Manmohan Singh had written a letter to Prime Minister suggesting 5 suggestions which he had given, and all have been implemented. And yesterday also I gave a video in which Rahul Gandhi also suggested that all political leaders should cut short of the public rallies in view of the spread of COVID in India. So, but today, Prime Minister himself decided to curtail his rallies, and BJP also decided not to, allow 500 people at the rallies which they are going to conduct in next phases of elections in West Bengal. They have also drawn the COVID guidelines during the public rallies. And for this also, the Congress leaders started to take credit for this. They started to say that it was because of Rahul Gandhi, who had suggested to call off the public rallies. So, same thing the Prime Minister and the BJP is implementing. So, they are trying to take credit, and it is very laughable. Is it possible for arranging vaccines for all in just one day? Is it possible? It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of meetings. It takes a lot of groundwork to make the arrangements. In fact, the Modi government were preparing for this announcement of vaccination for all for many days, or for many days, and being in the power portal, it would not be very difficult for politicians like Manmohan Singh, Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi to know what the government is intending to do. They would certainly have got the inputs that Prime Minister Modi is coming up with the plans of announcing a vaccination for all, and even some suggestions would have been given by some of the Congress leaders, knowing very well the magnanimity of Narendra Modi of seeking advice from anybody, any of his rivals even. That's quite established fact. So, what I mean to say is that the Congress leaders, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Manmohan Singh, they very well knew that the Modi government is going to announce vaccines for all. They were knowing it very well. Therefore, they did this drama of through Manmohan Singh writing a letter to Prime Minister Modi